Hello, good morning, good afternoon, as we always start. Good evening, wherever you are in the world. Hi,
Yeah.
Katie, how you doing?
Hey, Bruce. I'm doing really good today. The sun is out and yeah, it's a good day. How are you?
Don't talk about the sun being out. We're in Scotland in the dark and the wet and the rain and the cold. You're West Coast America, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in California, but we get a lot of fog where I am too, so I can relate, but it doesn't get super cold,
You'll get no
thankfully.
one in the UK feeling sorry for you if you live in
Yeah.
California.
Yes, yes, I know, I know.
So how you doing?
Yeah, things are good in the world of the Sinclair method. Lots of things happening and just getting excited about where this is all going. I think it's gaining more and more momentum. I've been in this realm for 4 years now, and I just see more and more things happening. So I'm excited to chat with you about that again today.
Brilliant. And you've got a new project up and running, which we'll talk about later on. So,
Yep.
so yeah. So do you want to introduce yourself quickly, just for anyone that's never met you, or?
Sure. Yeah. Hi, my name is Katie Lain, and I am a success story of the Sinclair method. For people who don't know what that method is, it's essentially a way to unlearn alcohol addiction on a neurological level by taking a medication 1 hour or so before your first drink of the day. And this process essentially rewires your brain so you no longer crave alcohol. And if you continue to drink alcohol, you can do so with control. And I'm a success story of that method. It was just miraculous for me, really, and how it worked. It took time to work. I was on the method for a year, but it totally transformed my relationship to alcohol. I went from a nightly bottle of wine and binge drinker to someone who was drinking like a couple of times a month. And then ultimately, I quit drinking about 3 years ago just because this method made me fall out of love with alcohol. So now I can't shut up about it, and Bruce knows that. So that's why we're here talking about it every single month, because I'm so passionate about this method reaching more people. What about you,
Brilliant.
Bruce? For people who
So
don't know
yeah,
who you are.
yeah, well, yeah. My name is Bruce Rose. I run Alcohol Recovery Scotland here in Scotland or the UK. We work with clients here. My background was I worked in alcohol and drug rehab center management for a number of years with abstinent-based programs. We connected quite closely with clients into AA programs, CA, SMART meetings, something called Road to Recovery here in Scotland. So we connected in quite a lot there. So that was my background, was abstinent-based programs. I managed a rehab center up here in the Highlands of Scotland. Long story short, I was trying to find the funds. The rehab closed at the time because we didn't have any funds. So I tried to get the funds to restart the rehab, but the cost of running a rehab is so high. It was really difficult to get the funds. Long story short, I started searching for another option, came across the Sinclair Method, and I thought, what an absolute, utter load of rubbish. But thankfully, for some reason, the next day after watching a video on it, I went back from Claudia Christian, YouTube TED Talk. I went back and had a look at it again, thinking we might be able to use a couple of bits and pieces in this for a model in this country. And the more I researched it, the more I looked into the science of it all, the more I looked into how it worked, the more sense it was just made complete and utter sense to me. And then when I saw how it worked, I started working with a few clients. And like Katie's saying, since then, it's just been client after client after client. And when you understand the success, when, like Katie and I, we are working with clients all the time, when you see the level of success in it compared to other programs, you, like Katie's saying, we can't shut up about it, unfortunately. And we don't plan to either.
Yeah.
That's not to knock any other program. If a program works for someone, it's absolutely fantastic. It's more for people who are looking for something at the moment. And if you've got a chance of high success or slightly lower success, that's the wrong way to put it. But we're trying to give people options. And this, I believe, is a very, 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 very good option.
Yeah, we see the success over and over. Of course, it's not 100% success rate, but with the right protocol and persistence and support system, like it's just like your program, you really set people up for success because you're working with them regularly to help them, change habits, reduce their drinking. And that's like the ideal environment, I think, for someone on TSM, is to kind of have that someone guiding them through it in a way that's supportive, whether it's through one-on-one or, group support or, community support or something like that. But to go at it alone, I think that's harder for people. And I've seen that with a lot of people I've encountered. Like they've kind of tried it on their own, and some will do well, but others may not fully understand it or not fully commit or comply with it. So but it's a very successful method.
Yeah. And just as we're just getting started now, we've got a number of people come on now. So we have a comment section. If anyone's got any questions as we go through, we'll be here till 7 o'clock UK time, an hour, 55 minutes from now. If you've got any questions or any comments or anything you'd like to ask or mention, or feel free to put it up and Katie will answer it all.
Bruce is going to go take a nap.
No, honestly, if you've got any questions, we'd love to answer anything. It is a new model for a lot of people. It's also, I would describe it as an alcohol reduction program leading to safe drinking or abstinence. So it's not your abstinent based, you're not stopping drinking and then going through the process of recovery from there. It's an alcohol reduction. It's a process that takes 3 to 6 months. But I always say it's a long-term permanent solution. James, hey James, how you doing? It's a long-term permanent solution. It doesn't happen overnight. You don't stop drinking overnight. It will happen over 3 to 6 months, and it will work with. I've got clients who we would classify as chronic drinkers, bottle of spirits a day plus, right the way to someone that's drinking. I had a client in today that was, or a couple of days that they're drinking Friday, Saturday nights, but they know that it's getting out of control. So it's anything and everything in between. So.
And I will say too, real quick, even though it takes the 3 to 6 months or even longer for some people, there's progress along the way. And in my experience with it, it's very empowering because you see yourself truly change and become empowered over alcohol like you never could before. Like I was leaving wine in a glass at a restaurant, but before I would drink every last drop. I couldn't imagine leaving leftover wine in a glass. So these little changes that happen where you know that it's working for you, and there are these small progressive little things, but it totally changes how you relate to alcohol. Just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no, thank you. And just Katie and I were just having a chat before we came on, and we always just tend to kind of go by the seat of our pants. But I think tonight I would love to hit on the subject of relapse, because my main thinking and not understanding, but the main difference that I find between what the area that I used to work in, the abstinent-based programs, to the Sinclair Method, is the relapse rates. The number one reason for relapse, I believe, is craving. Now, it can be triggered by an argument with someone, or a bad day at work, or a life situation of some sort can trigger it. However, what is causing that is an underlying craving process that's going on. Again, we can explain all that from what we do here later on if it's needed. But because that craving is there, when people go on an abstinent-based program, there's quite a high chance, unfortunately, that the relapse is going to happen at some point. Now, with some people it doesn't, which is absolutely fantastic. We support that 100%. But the relapse rates are so much higher in abstinent-based programs. And I noticed with the Sinclair Method, the first thing I noticed was people aren't relapsing. I'm going, oh, hang on a minute, we're not getting the relapses that I used to get before. And do you want to talk anything about that, Katie? Or?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I totally agree with you that it's the craving that causes it, for most people, because there might be a stressful life event, but I know for my own experience, I probably tried to quit drinking dozens of times, like 20 or 30 times before TSM over the course of 8 to 10 years. And I would think every time that this is the time, I'm not going back to it. I was very convicted, but then those cravings would be in my mind, and I would, whether it went a week or a month or 6 months, ultimately something would happen that would just cause me to relapse. And it could be anything, a stressful event, a happy event, an emotion, a memory, a life event, anything could have happened that would have triggered the relapse. And a part of me knew that I was going to relapse and drink at some point. It was just a matter of when, even though I was really trying not to and had all the intentions in the world not to. It was that obsessive thoughts about alcohol. Even though I'd gone 6 months without drinking, I was still thinking about drinking every day and avoiding situations and people and places just so I wouldn't be tempted. And that for me was like no way to live. And I would ultimately surrender to the craving, thinking, screw it. It's not worth it to resist this urge anymore. And now we know it's because that craving means we're equating alcohol to our survival on some level in our brain. And so with TSM, from day one, honestly, yes, you're still drinking on the method. So people think, well, like, of course you're not going to relapse. You're still drinking. But every time you're drinking on the medication, you're regaining that control, and alcohol's losing its power over you, and you gradually lose interest in it. And so I haven't drank in 3 years. But I feel relapse proof. Like I've gone through plenty of difficult things in life that, my old self would have used as an excuse to drink. But because I'm not craving, it's like I don't have any even thought to drink. It doesn't even occur to me to do so. I often tell people, I don't smoke cigarettes. So it's not like if something stressful happens, I'm going to go out and buy a pack of cigarettes and just start smoking. I just don't have that relationship with cigarettes. And so the same happens with alcohol. Is this gets erased from your brain and you're not craving anymore. It's really easy to let something go when you don't want it. What are your thoughts on that, Bruce?
I find this area of Sinclair Method just absolutely fascinating. And I could never, the reason I switched off the video when I first heard about it was that the clinical studies that were done originally were showing a 78% success rate. And I had worked in the industry. I knew that was either made up or twisted and manipulated to sound good, or was an utter load of rubbish, which is why I switched it off. I was actually quite angry when I heard that, because I thought this is them just playing at it. Then I started to realize, once I started working with clients, it was client after client after client was going through the program, and none of them were relapsing, and everyone was reporting that I've got no craving, I've got no desire to drink. We were getting guys who were chronic drinkers, like I said, a bottle of vodka a day, coming right the way down and still drinking. And that was the bit that really threw my head, because I thought, how can you take somebody who is a chronic drinker or whatever level of dependency, but with someone who's a chronic drinker drinking a bottle of vodka or a bottle of whiskey a day, and bring them right the way down? And at that point, they can have a drink on a Friday night and a drink on a Saturday night and stop there. Now, in a rehab center, if you had someone who had been abstinent for a period, we don't have time, I don't think, tonight to go into all the neurological process, but if you have someone who's on an abstinent-based program, the minute they have one drink, what happens is the release of the endorphins goes from where it's at right up to, it's 1,200 nanograms. It's my sad bit of information. It goes up to 1,200 nanograms instantly. So a normal relapse from an abstinent-based scenario will take between a day and 3 days. Drink 1 or 2 drinks the first day, 3 or 4 drinks the second day, and by day 3, it's stuff it and you're back into whatever it is. And it's because the reward that the brain is getting in the brain, the reward that the brain's getting from the endorphins. So I noticed on the Sinclair Method, what then happens is you don't have that. And so therefore, you can bring someone who's a very, very heavy drinker right the way down, and they can carry on having an occasional drink. But it's not white-knuckled. It's not forced. It's not, all right, I'm going to have one drink. And then if you do that with someone who's drinking at the chronic level, it's physically, for them, it is physically impossible for them to do that. And then here I'm thinking, well, are they telling me the truth? Is this? And then there's another one, another one, another one. And I'm thinking, this is working. This is working. And I have to be honest with you. I don't find this easy to say, but at the time I was working upstairs in the house, I would come downstairs in tears some nights, going, this is working. This works. And like you're saying, Katie, at the beginning, you just can't stop. When you know that it's working and you're seeing it impacting people's lives, you can't not then just keep going with it and do everything you can do to get it going. So anyway, I've gone off. I always go off on track on things, but
no, that's great.
The relapses are, you just don't get them. The only way you get a relapse on the Sinclair Method is if you stop taking the medication, and that does happen. You will get some people that will stop it for a number of reasons. But if you keep taking the medication, you only take a pill on the days that you're drinking. On the days that you're not drinking, you don't take medication, you won't relapse. You can't relapse. It's just can't happen.
Yeah. And even if people, because sometimes what happens, as you know, Bruce, when we're on this method, there's a component of it that's habitual. And so if you're someone that's used to drinking a bottle of wine every night and you're taking the medication, sometimes people can still overdrink on the medication or drink through it, as a lot of people talk about. And that's where we understand it's that habit piece that can really kick in. They might still drink as much as they were before, but it's not so much out of that burning desire and urge to drink like it was, before TSM, but it's more of like, I don't even really have this desire, but I'm watching myself continue to drink this whole bottle of wine. Why is that? And that to me is an indication that it's time to work on the habitual side of it. Because I'm sure you hear that a lot with people. I do as well. It's like they know that they're drinking more than they want to. They're getting that off signal, almost like how we can get full from food, but we keep eating anyway because it's good or whatever, or a habit to finish our plate. So that can still happen with this method, but it's not like this binge behavior where you're drinking until all the alcohol is gone and you're passing out. It's like the longer someone is on the method, they might still overdrink, but they're doing it more out of a habit piece. And really anyone can change a habit with a right protocol and time to do so.
Yeah, and that leads us on to the second thing that I'd scribbled down earlier on is habits. And it was, I can't remember where I heard it. I heard it in the very early days of, when it comes to addiction, there are two very...
Uh-oh, are you there, Bruce? Is he frozen? If there's people in the chat, could you tell us if you can hear Bruce? Hello. Nope, can't hear him. Okay, nobody can hear him. All right. He's frozen. Well, maybe I'll have to stop the Oh, I think he left the broadcast. So he'll probably end this and then we will have to jump back on. Let's see here. Yeah, if anyone who's here, I don't know if Bruce, hopefully he'll just rejoin, but if anyone has any, the Scott is frozen. All you, Katie. All right, a one-woman show here. I'm used to this stuff. Yeah, if anyone has any questions or things to talk about, I know we were talking about relapse for people who are, having the chances to relapse when they're not on the Sinclair method and what that difference is. But I think one of the biggest challenges that people have on the Sinclair method is, well, one of them can be the compliancy piece. If they are, not fully ready to let go of alcohol in the way that they've known it before, that is something that can be challenging for people. And what I mean by that is, yeah, Hannah, non-compliancy, the devil spawn. Alcohol for many of us, I know it was true for me, it was like an old best friend that, someone said the other day, like, alcohol was always there for me. Even if my best friend wasn't there for me or my friend wasn't there for me, alcohol was always there for me. And that's something that can be tricky for people when they get going on this method is, we've seen alcohol as this very easy to access, quick acting coping tool in some sense. And so when we go on the Sinclair method and we're still looking to alcohol in that way, this is the biggest thing I see where people choose to not comply. Because what happens when you're taking the naltrexone is you can still get drunk, you can still enjoy drinking. Sometimes people ask, is it still fun to drink on the medication, or what's the point if you're not getting the endorphins? But it is still pleasurable. It just loses the endorphin kick you're getting, or that euphoria you get. And so when people are going on the Sinclair method and they are still, wanting to turn to alcohol to get totally numbed out or to feel that euphoric buzz again, and they get on this method, they realize, oh my gosh, it's working to well. Like I miss that buzz I used to get, or I miss using alcohol as that familiar coping tool. That's what leads people to non-compliance, which is really the golden rule of this method, is, you know, always taking that naltrexone 1 to 2 hours before your first drink of the day. But if we're in a place where we are not ready to let go of alcohol in that way, it can cause us to skip doses and not be compliant with it. And I think that, you know, for different people, they get ready at different times. I've known plenty of people that have, oh, there he is again.
Sorry, I don't know what happened there.
No, that's okay. I was talking about the challenge of non-compliance. I was kind of doing a one-woman show here.
Oh, carry on. All right, I'll just...
No, I can't come back. Oh no. But I just want to wrap up what I was saying. Like the challenge of non-compliance, if we're not ready to let go of alcohol in the way that we've known it, and it's a gradual process with TSM. It's not something that you have to do overnight. That's the beauty of it. And I've used the example a lot. Like alcohol can still be your comfort blanket in a sense as you are gradually reducing on this method. It's not like the rug is ripped out from under you, but we do have to get to a place where we are willing to let go of alcohol as we've known it, meaning like our best friend that's going to cause us to become totally numb and unconscious when things get rough. And that's a process of building new habits and new coping tools the longer someone is on this method. But just wanted to speak more to that while Bruce was figuring out his internet issues.
I live in the Highlands of Scotland and the internet's not great here. So occasionally it just drops off and it's like...
I was like, I'll improvise while Bruce is gone. I'm glad you figured it out.
So yeah, sorry about that. So sorry, what were you on about? Habits?
Yeah, well, I was just kind of talking about the compliancy piece and why the number one reason I think why people don't comply with the method fully, because we were talking about relapse, and like technically what relapse is on TSM is just lack of compliance and what leads to that. And I think it really is one of the big reasons I see with my clients and people is like not ready to totally let go of alcohol as the way they've known it. What do you think, Bruce? What have you seen as like something that leads to non-compliance?
I've actually had 2 situations, or three recently, where people have stopped taking the medication, and the relapse happened, almost exactly the same speed within a couple of days as before. And 2 of them actually happened because the brain will very, very quickly forget where it was a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, even 6 months ago. And the challenge with that is when people get down to the lower levels, you don't really feel the medication. There's no side effects or anything with it after the first couple of days. So there is a question mark coming into a few people that I've spoken to recently is this just a placebo? Have I forced this drink levels to come all the way down myself? And so sometimes they just say, well, I'll just have the weekend off the medication, and bang, it's before you know it, it's gone. The other thing as well I've noticed is that the reason that because this is what Katie and I do, we've got a lot of experience with it. Without the support structure, or without Katie's program in the States or around the world, without what we do, it is possible to reduce too much too quickly. Is one major thing that I find, because people need to adjust to life depending on how much they're drinking and how long they've been drinking that for. People need to adjust to life without alcohol, without having that ability to turn to drinking when something goes wrong. So as people are reducing, the hardest part of that is learning to adjust to life without it. So people reduce too much too quickly and then hit a very, very stressful situation. What will sometimes happen is that they'll stop taking the medication for a couple of days just so they can have a quick blowout. They're going back to their old habits to have a quick blowout and then get back on it. Now, that's not a good idea to do. But again, through Katie's program and through what we do, we like to monitor people's reduction and make sure that they're safe or they're comfortable as they're reducing. So it does happen. We would be lying if we said it didn't happen. However, I would say 3 or 4%. If I was to put a figure on it, around about that area of people will stop taking the medication for some reason. Well, no, 3 or 4% that I know of is probably then 1 or 2 clients drop off that I don't hear from. So I would say it's possibly up to between 5 and 7%, I would say, of people that stop taking the medication. If you've been struggling with dependency for a while, I have never met anyone who would not give their left arm to get rid of the dependency once it's got a hold of you. At that level, nobody does it for fun. They're not doing it because they want to have a nice night out. They're not doing it for anything else, except the brain becomes dependent on alcohol. And most people we work with will do anything to get rid of it. So once people realize that it does do what we say it does in the tin, it doesn't happen very often. So is that the experience across in the States? Or?
Yeah, no, I think that like your point about sometimes people can reduce too quickly. I've heard that from people as well, where it almost works too quickly or too well for them. And they're kind of shocked at like, oh, I wasn't quite ready for this yet. Or like, you know, I'm breaking up with alcohol. I always equated alcohol to like a bad lover. It's like, I know it's not good for me, but I don't want to let it go. So it can happen too quickly, but that's the beauty of this method. Like you can take it slow in most cases. And you know, I know I've heard you say like, you know, sometimes if you're drinking more than you've planned, like as long as you've taken that pill beforehand, like you're still making that progress. It's not like you are going backwards or anything, you know, necessarily, especially if you've got the pill and you overdrank. It's like, okay, well, that's okay. What can you learn from it? Which is a totally new way to look at it. Whereas, you know, before it's like when you're abstinent, you relapse. It's just like the world is over. You're back to day one. You know, it probably leads to a binge that goes on for who knows how long. But with TSM, it's not like that.
I've lost count with the number of clients who, in abstinent-based programs, when I was working before, the big danger area was that when people left rehab, at some point in life, they're going to hit a life circumstance, a loss of a loved one, a divorce, or something like that. And in those areas there, that's the stage where there's the most danger because they're likely to pick up one drink and just, I can't cope anymore, I'm going to have a drink. The brain goes from 0 to 1,200 nanograms like that, and bang, you're into a full relapse. The thing I find really, really nice about the Sinclair method is that once, even whatever level someone's at, as they're going through the program, if they get to the point where they hit a life situation, then as long as they keep taking the medication, I've had a couple of people who have lost loved ones during the process, and they've said to me, I don't know what to do. I feel like having a drink tonight, or I feel like drinking more tonight. And I say to people in that stage, as long as they've been on the program for 7 to 10 weeks, which there's a specific reason for that period, if you've been on the program for more than 7 to 10 weeks, if you come across a bad situation, a loss of a loved one, something like that, take your medication, and give yourself the freedom tonight to drink whatever you want to drink. Now that is such an upside down thinking towards the process, and people that I've said that to have come back to me the next day and said, you know what, I gave myself permission to do it, but I had 1 glass, 2 glasses of wine, and then I didn't really want any more. But the fact that they've given themselves permission to do that, they did it. People have gone away on all expenses paid holidays, as much drink as you want, and they come back and say, I had 1 or 2 glasses a night. Now, someone who's dependent on alcohol goes on an all-inclusive holiday, you're out for the count for 7 days or 14 days, however long you're away for. But with TSM and naltrexone, it's just such a, we say it every time, Katie, when we speak, it's just such a nice, gentle, kind, forgiving way of getting someone from where they're at down to where they need to be.
Yeah. And I want to read something that Hannah put in the chat, because I think this is something that does complicate it a little bit more, is the trauma piece of drinking. And she says, I find it really interesting since trauma plus addiction are intricately linked, and often the amygdala, sympathetic nervous system activation is behind the non-compliancy. Trauma response kicks in and the cognition goes offline, and whammo, non-compliancy. Yeah. And I think Hannah's probably more knowledgeable what's happening in the brain system when trauma response is kicking in, but I certainly know that through, you know, memories or emotions that surface, that is, one of the things that can kick it off.
And that's where we are. This is where I become very, very, and this is what I do for a living. So we're a non-profit organization here in Scotland. My salary is funded, so I drive a Skoda. I'm not making money out of this.
What's a Skoda?
It's a cheaper end car in this country.
Oh, okay.
So
You're like, my unicycle is my only source of transportation.
I walk everywhere. I eat bread and butter. No, I don't. What was I going to say? Yeah. So the reason I'm saying that is that the support program, whether you're doing what Katie does, which we'll talk about later on, or whether you're doing a one-to-one program like we do, is absolutely vital. The medication will do so much for you, but the most important part of it is for example, here in Scotland or the UK, we will do a weekly appointment with clients, at least a weekly appointment. And the reason we're doing that is as people are reducing, as they're coming down, what I'm listening for and watching for is to make sure that there is no trauma signs coming up. Now, the minute we get that, there's lots of different ways we deal with things depending on who someone is and what the situation is, but absolutely trauma is going to come up in a lot of situations. So in those situations, we have counselors in place that we will then refer to counselors. We have GPs, which are doctors for the guys in the States. We might refer them to the doctor. We might refer them to a psychiatrist. So we'll make sure that as that person is reducing, that they are comfortable. And I've started using the word safe. We need to make sure that people are safe as they're reducing. Now, if someone's not linked into a good program, what then happens is they will reduce. And I've gone through this with a client recently. They've reduced 50%, and then all of a sudden, the past trauma and everything, the emotions from the past has started to build up, and it's come right out. So at that point, what I do in a program is as long as their drinking is at a safe level, I'll then say, okay, right now we need to stop the reduction program. Just stop it. Boom. We need to make sure that you are safe emotionally and psychologically. So now let's just speak to some professionals. Let's get you some support, some help, so that when we then carry on the reduction program, you are protected and safe in your environment. Because we're doing everything online, we want to make sure you've got some professionals around you to work with you in your situation. So that's why I get so strong about what Katie's doing and what we're doing. I'm not just saying this to promote ourselves, but it is a very, very, don't come to us. If you want to go to someone else, go to someone else, but make sure you have somebody, especially if there is trauma in the past, make sure that you've got someone that you can walk right through the process with.
Yeah, absolutely. And someone said, Bruce helped my husband. Bruce is exceptional at what he does.
Oh, thanks, Anne. Yeah, Anne's a lovely lady. So is your husband. Not a lovely lady, a lovely man.
Yeah, but I know, just like speaking from my own personal experience, I think, we all have traumas from our past to different degrees. What's super traumatizing to one can feel the same to another. And I know what was true for me in my experience was like a lot of emotions bubbled up to the surface that I wasn't even aware that I was using alcohol to repress. And I cried a lot, like through TSM. I had to feel things. I had to go to different, types of therapy to let stuff out, because that was surprising to me. I kind of thought I just was like a party girl and like to drink to have fun. But as I became less numb, these things started to surface. And I know that I had that choice to, I kept thinking like the only way out is through, which is, a common phrase, but it's so true. Like you've got to go through it, or to like jump ship and go back to my old ways, which I wasn't going to do. I didn't want to do. So it's like, you have to go through it. But I think that it is a common experience for people and the different degrees of trauma that we have. But I was unaware that I was using alcohol to cope as much as I was until those things started to surface.
And then just on the other side of it as well, and this is, it's an unusual, what's the word? I don't know what the word is. I'll just tell you what it is, and then you'll know what I'm talking about. A lot of the teaching, or a lot of the training that we used to get in abstinence-based programs was that everybody is drinking because of a problem, or because of past trauma, or because of issues. So therefore, we have to deal with all the issues before we can deal with the drinking. So what I've learned through the Sinclair method is in some situations that is definitely the case. Like we were just talking about, there are situations that we do need to seek professional help with to work through it. However, the one thing that I've learned is that alcohol dependency is a learnt behavior. So what happens is when we're kids, we have a drink, we get this huge reward, and the brain goes, oh, that's nice. So it does it again and again and again and again. So at that stage, it's just something habitually that we do. Now, the reason it becomes dependency is because at some point in someone's life, they go through a period of trauma, or they go through a period of unhappiness, or something creates an issue where they will have a longer period of time with an increased amount of alcohol intake. So therefore they have a longer period of time at this higher level. And then what happens is the brain drops from being habitual and emotional, or just a social thing, to being, the brain then becomes dependent on that reward. The minute it becomes dependent, the reason people will continue to drink from then onwards, most of the reason they drink is not because of their emotional situations, but because the brain is dependent, if that makes sense. So people, there will be others that come along that get people to drink, but the main reason they're drinking is because the brain is dependent.
Oh no, did we lose him again?
Back again.
Oh, there you are. Okay, good.
The reason that, so it very, very definitely splits it into two areas. So when the brain is dependent, what we need to do is deal with the dependency in the brain. The minute so that's what the naltrexone does, that's what the Sinclair method does. Once we have that under control from the medication, we can then deal with the habitual, behavioral, emotional, psychological side. And that becomes very, very independent based on most people. Just a quick example. I had a client once who went through a divorce 25 years ago. They've remarried, they've got 3 kids, they're really happy. Now, the reason their increase of drinking came was during the first divorce. So when they remarried, but at that point they became dependent on alcohol, so they carried on drinking. So every time they tried to stop drinking, someone said, you need to go back into counseling again and again and again for the first marriage. But in fact, the issue wasn't the first marriage. The issue was the brain is dependent on alcohol. So we dealt with the dependency. We brought it all down. That person's life was actually very, very comfortable and nice because they had a beautiful new marriage, beautiful kids. And so they didn't need to keep going over the past situation. So I'm just saying that to be aware. We've got to balance it out a little bit. However, that's not to take away that yes, there's definitely, we've got to be that's why the support comes into it, because we have to be aware and make sure that as people are coming down or reducing, that they're in a safe place emotionally and psychologically. But anyway, I don't know if that came across right.
No, it's very understandable. And I think that's an important point to make. Like, I think we can rehash traumas that maybe aren't the root cause anymore, just like that example that you gave. And therapy for me, when I was still craving alcohol, was like trying to do therapy when you're dying of thirst. It's just like, good luck with that. Like, it's not going to get too far. And I think like we train ourselves, a bad emotion equals a drink. So anything bad in life, we're turning to alcohol. A good emotion equals a drink. And that's what you're talking about, that dependency. It's, yeah.
And the other thing that's fascinating as well is, even though if you get to that point where you are starting to struggle with something, the golden rule, like with everything in the Sinclair method, is whatever you do, take your pill. Now, if you start to struggle with something, have an extra drink, have an extra couple of drinks one night. And this is where people who've been around abstinence, this is where my brain just got fried, because hang on a minute, this person's on a reduction program, they've had a bit of a life situation, so your advice is to tell them have an extra couple of drinks. I'm like, no, we're trying to stop them drinking, but what we're doing is we're making sure that they're safe and comfortable, that the program will allow them time to adjust to life again without the alcohol. Now, with abstinence, you just stop like that, boom. You've got to deal with withdrawals, you've got to deal with detox, you've got to deal with craving, you've got to deal with ongoing life. One slip up and it's gone, boom. Whereas the Sinclair method will allow you time to go, actually, do you know what, I can't cope with this. So therefore, I can maintain the level I'm drinking at the moment safely, as long as it's at a safe level with the naltrexone, with the medication, and I can seek professional help. So
Yeah, and it kind of prepares you for the next time, because I think if you're realizing, okay, I can't cope with this, I need to take naltrexone and have an extinction session, the next time you're like, okay, well, maybe I can try coping with it a little bit differently the next time. Maybe I'll have fewer drinks, or maybe I will try an alcohol-free day. And it's a process that you kind of work up to and you can mentally prepare for, as opposed to just, that abstinence where it's like from here on out, you have to try to figure everything out without alcohol, which is doable. People do it, but I myself could never do it. Can I ask you, Bruce, with when you learned about this method and you were very opposed to it initially, because I obviously get those types of comments from people who've had success with AA or other abstinence-based programs. And again, like we don't want those to go away. We're glad that they exist because they help people. We just want to provide different options for those that those programs don't work for. But the common belief out there is like, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. You like can never have another drink again. Is that the mindset you were coming at when you first learned about the Sinclair method? And what are your thoughts on that now?
Absolutely, 100%. Because all that was available in Scotland, England, and I'm now learning across the world was abstinent-based programs. Like you were saying, every single abstinent-based program has come out of AA, because AA started in 1935 or around about that period. They have done an amazing job through that period. That they have put a program in place that has kept people sober for many, many years, and it still works for a number of people today. However, medicine, science, neurology, it's all moved on so much more. So we're now in a position where Dr. Sinclair, I saw a video that he did once, and he said exactly the same thing, Katie. He said, once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, unless you can rewire the brain, unless you can rewire what is going on in here that is causing the addiction. Why is it some people are addicted and other people aren't? What's good? We believe, and we've obviously seen a lot of research and everything to know that there's a neurological condition. There's too much. Some people have too much endorphin being released as a result of drinking alcohol, so therefore it's easier to become addicted. So why is it the case that some people are like that? And so you can rewire it is now neurologically possible, alongside medication and behavioral and psychological and emotional support, to rewire the brain and take someone who is a chronic drinker down to being a normal drinker. It is mind-blowing.
I like that, like once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic, unless you can rewire the brain. I like that response now, because I haven't known exactly what to say to people without having to go into a whole spiel. But it's interesting because I see people too in like free Facebook groups who are in like, moderation or sobriety groups, and I just see them over and over again having those day ones, and they're starting over and they're frustrated and they keep relapsing. And I try to like gently point them to the Sinclair method, and sometimes I feel like it's just like hitting a wall. Like they can't even comprehend that there's this other treatment that doesn't require abstinence. It actually requires drinking and uses a medication. And even though I know these people could benefit from it and they're in a desperate state, because I see their post on the Facebook group, it's like I can't get through. And so it's interesting just to see that, because I think there are these really tightly held beliefs around what recovery needs to look like, and it needs to look like abstinence and nothing else. So just an interesting observation.
I had a client today just on that point that was saying, he said to me, I want to be at the end of the program by Christmas. And I went, whoa, stop. I said, I call it abstinent-based thinking. I said, that's abstinent-based thinking, where you have a start and a finish, and then you have to just grab hold of anything and just keep going as long as you can. I said, the Sinclair method is, I have epilepsy. There's too much electricity in my brain. I take medication. That's a neurological condition in the brain. I have to take medication for the rest of my life to keep that all under control. Alcohol dependency is exactly the same thing. There's too much endorphin being released. So therefore, we need to take, for people who have that condition, you need to take naltrexone or the medication to reduce the amount of endorphins so that you can then keep everything under control. I don't know what I was saying with that. I always go off on a ramble somewhere, but
no,
just the next one.
Just the belief that like abstinence is like, your client was the wanting it done by Christmas. the abstinence
Oh,
mindset.
sorry, yeah. So I said to him, and I said, it's a process. I said, it's not gonna. You don't have a start and a finish on it. And I said, each day that you go now for the rest of your life, that you're going to have more and more and more and more and more control over alcohol until you get to a stage where you can not drink for 3 or 4, or like you, Katie, you can have a year, 2 years, and not even think about it. Now, the nice thing about it is if you decided next week you wanted to have a drink, you just take a pill, have a drink, and it wouldn't spiral out of control because you're getting a much lower endorphin release in the brain. So therefore, you don't get the high one, so you don't go into bonk mode. Bang! I need more. I need more. I need more. So.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone in the chat is saying that they want this, and how do I start? I guess it depends where you are. Did you want to answer that, Bruce?
Yeah, there's a little Scottish badge on it. Yes, sir, I can boogie, it says on it. I'll have to explain that one to Katie later.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about.
It's a Scottish soccer badge. So.
Oh, that's what that is. Okay.
And I'm guessing the name is Chris Nally rather than Nally Chris. I'm guessing. Chris, without trying to promote ourselves too much, if you go, excuse me, if you go into Alcohol Recovery Scotland website, Alcohol Recovery Scotland. Oh, I know we have a banner running. I'll stick a banner up. alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk, and more than happy to have a chat with you and just see where you're at. Every single person is in a different situation. I'm based up in the Highlands, Chris, so more than happy to have a chat. I'll give you a buzz on the phone or something, and more than happy to have a chat and see where you're at and what's happening. So. Recovery isn't a linear journey, Emma says. So
Heck
yeah,
no.
absolutely. And Ian says hi. Ian is the man that's responsible for my website. So thank you, Ian.
Oh, that's great.
So I know a little bird. No, I don't. I know more than a little bird. He's told me. You have a new project up and running. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah. Same thing. Don't want to promote myself too much, but we have created this platform. Just last month we launched it. It's tsmcommunity.com, and it's an online platform where people can come and get support who are on the Sinclair Method. We have different, options for people depending on the support that they want, but on here we offer video lessons that really walk people through the TSM process, step by step. There's also option for, group support, and we do other live events and are constantly posting. There's like a live feed community interaction where we're constantly posting things that will kind of educate and inform people and keep them inspired on their journey. But we really created this because one of the challenges I've had as a coach the last few years is like, people find me through my YouTube channel and they get this piece of information here and over here, and people are kind of having to piece TSM together. And I'll be working with a client who's been on it for 6 months and is, missing a key component that they should have had in their first 30 days on TSM. So we really wanted to create a place that creates like a cohesive TSM experience where someone can go no matter where they're at in the method or in the process and really get everything they need support wise and resource wise. So that's a little bit about what it is. And I'm really excited about it. Just, we're just getting started, but I just think that this is going to be a way for more people to have access to this method, because we're going to be doing a lot of outreach to just raise awareness about this amazing method.
And it's trying to put together as many different, it's a worldwide issue that is massive. Katie and I have been lucky enough to be working with some guys in Kenya at the moment, in Africa. You would not believe the issues that they're having in Kenya at the moment. All the large companies are targeting Kenya for alcohol. Alcohol's gone through the roof. The drinking issues have gone through the roof in Kenya. So keep going, Katie. Absolutely amazing. So
yeah, same to you, Bruce.
Carol says TSM is a good program.
Absolutely, it is.
Careful, I say she better do. She's one of my clients. Thank you, Carol. I'll give you your £10 tomorrow.
5 stars.
No, Carol's an amazing lady. I shouldn't have said that actually on live. But anyway, sorry, Carol. So yeah, any other questions that we've missed? Hannah said earlier on. Where did she go? It was something about a spiritual.
Oh yeah.
Malady.
Sorry, I was reading another comment.
Yeah.
The spiritual malady concept and disease model still have a stronghold. Yep. Hopefully we'll see significant changes in our lifetimes. Yeah, it's so true. And that works for some people. Honestly, if they're going to want to slap a label of alcoholic on them for the rest of their lives and be in recovery forever, like that works for people. But yeah, I wish it wasn't the stronghold, as Hannah says, because it's just not factually or scientifically true anymore. That, we know now that it's a learned behavior, like you said. And yes, it's more complicated than that. There are more people that are genetically predisposed to it. But, like a lot of people say, if you never started drinking, you wouldn't become an alcoholic. It's a learned behavior because our brains are wired to chase after pleasure and anything that gives us pleasure. That's why we can get addicted to sex and drugs and gambling and food and all of that stuff. So alcohol's in there as well.
And Gwen, this is my pet subject. Gwen has said, how can we accept it as part of the process instead of beating ourselves up? The first and foremost thing that I say to every single client that I work with is rule number one with everything that I have learned through the Sinclair Method is alcohol dependency is not your fault. I don't care what organization, I don't care what individual, I don't care how someone words it or puts it to you. I've had enough knowledge, I've read enough research, I've read enough everything else now to understand that alcohol dependency is a neurological condition of the brain. It's exactly the same. It's not the same condition, but it's the same. Epilepsy is the same thing. Asthma is the same thing. Diabetes is the same thing. Alcohol dependence. Now, what people do as a result of being drunk under that is a different kettle of fish. But the cause of it is not your fault. So what we need to do, and what the Sinclair Method is starting to do, and is why we sometimes get a bit of slack from places, is because we teach that it's not your fault. A lot of the abstinence-based programs will teach you that it's your fault if you keep relapsing, because they don't understand what is causing the relapse from a neurological process. The only way they can justify it is to say, it's your fault. You chose to have that drink. Just don't have the drink in the house. Don't have that first drink. But you're fighting, and it's like people saying to me, just don't have a seizure. Don't take your medication and don't have a seizure. And when I have a seizure, it's all your fault, Bruce. It's all your fault, Bruce. It's not my fault. I can't help it. It's exactly the same with alcohol dependency. It is not anybody's fault. Now, what they do behavioral wise as a result of being drunk is we've got to take responsibility for that. But Gwen, I don't know if that's the question that you're answering, but the thing with the Sinclair Method is the longer you're on it, you'll realize that it's a very gentle, very kind, very medicated process to realize it's not your fault, and you can very comfortably and safely reduce your alcohol intake to a nice, safe place.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, Gwen, that I think for me, in my experience, what worked well was that I viewed every mistake or slip up or over drinking as a learning opportunity, because they really were very memorable. And it was me kind of, just navigating this path, pointing toward my goal of drink reduction. And I would make mistakes and I would, do really well. And so if I, the next day, if I was like, man, I drank too much last night, what happened? Why did I do that? I could really pinpoint some of the areas where it went wrong. Maybe I didn't have a meal first, or maybe I didn't wait the full hour on naltrexone, or maybe I wasn't mindful, or, all of these different things. And then I would take that information and apply it to my next extinction session, and it would be a little bit better, or at least I'd be more aware of kind of the pitfalls that can happen. And so if we can turn things around and realize, like Bruce always says, if you're taking your pill and complying, like, everything else is going to work for you. It's just going to take time. And so if you view those instead as like failures or mistakes, but as learning opportunities, that can better serve you and allow you to get the insight from what, went wrong, so to speak, and apply it to your next drinking session.
Okay, I'm just. How come these times go so quickly when we're chatting?
I just want to say to Hannah too, Gwen's commenting from YouTube, which is why you can't see it because I think you're on Facebook. And I'm going to read what Hannah said. Okay, so this helped me tremendously to understand more and let go of the shame and guilt. Oh, it's a video she's sharing. Do you want to share the name of the video, Hannah, and I can speak it aloud since Gwen's on YouTube? Oh, Kevin, is it Dr. Kevin McCauley? I love his work. Yeah, if you search, like, he did a documentary called Pleasure Unwoven. Yep. Yeah, on YouTube. And he has a couple talks on YouTube. His name's Dr. Kevin McCauley, and he really talks about how the brain is hijacked essentially when you're addicted to something. And I think also in some of our course videos on our platform, we created videos talking about what's going on in the brain when we have alcohol use disorder. And I think that for me, that's so empowering to know that. I know you're big on teaching that to your clients and others, because when we know what's going on in our brain, we really know it's not our fault. It's like our brain's just doing what it's supposed to do by learning to chase after alcohol. And now that we know that, it's like, oh, okay, and this is how we can undo that issue. Yeah.
Okay, and Chris, again, you're saying, can you send a private message? If you go onto the Facebook, where you're on Facebook here, if you go onto Alcohol Recovery Scotland Facebook or the Sinclair Method Scotland Facebook, just send a private message through there, Chris. I can get it through there as well, and then we can put you in touch with wherever the best place is. Okay, any final? What's your one tip of the month, advice of the month, or whatever?
Oh, geez. Well, I think I'm going to take what Gwen's comment was, to be kind to ourselves. Like, I think that this process is such a gentle way to unlearn alcohol use disorder. For me, it felt so good to surrender to something that is my craving for alcohol, because that felt so natural to do. And you can do that with TSM. So just to do everything to be extra kind to yourself, because this is a healing process. It's a process of getting to know yourself on a whole new level, and to, let go of alcohol as you've known it, meaning as a coping tool and something to be destructive with, but gain your power back over it. So yes, be kind to yourself. What about you, Bruce? What's your tip of the month?
I'm sitting there listening, fascinated to yours. I wasn't even thinking about myself.
Well, I didn't have one either. I just, Gwen's comment inspired me.
Absolutely bang on. Absolutely. Something quite boring. If you are going to get involved in the program, whatever you do, always take your medication. It's just one thing that will always go. If you take your medication, like Katie was saying, you're going to have a bad day where you have a few extra drinks. As long as you've taken your medication, it doesn't matter, because it will drop back down the next day, but it won't spiral out of control. I have never... No, I'll just say it straight up. I genuinely do not believe, and it's not because it's what we do, I genuinely believe that the Sinclair Method, alongside a good support program, whether it's through Katie ourselves or through anyone else that's offering a good support program, is the best model available today. And I'm not saying that because we do it. I had a drug background. I had my family were all drinkers. I wish that this model was around 30 years ago, 20 years ago. If all of us know people that are struggling with alcohol dependency. If you're in the States or somewhere around, please get in touch with Katie. If you're in the UK, get in touch with us. The lives that it is affecting and changing is incredible. And I genuinely believe in 5-10 years time, this will be an everyday occurrence, that hopefully you'll be able to go to your doctor and the doctor will go, oh, right, okay, naltrexone. We've got a support guys that we work with. We'll connect you with them, whoever they are, and however they're doing it. There's lots of different ways that it's being done. We do one-to-one. Katie does an online community. Find a program that fits you and works for you. Get your medication. It is not your fault. And yeah, just be good to yourself. It's a lovely process. That's the wrong way to explain.
No, it really is. Honestly, it was such a beautiful process. Like, I look back on my TSM journey so fondly. It's this beautiful process of undoing all of these things and kind of getting to know yourself on a new level, rebuilding yourself with less alcohol. And yeah, it's a beautiful process.
And just one story as well is literally 2 hours ago, I had a Zoom meeting with a minister in Northern Ireland, a church minister, someone that he knew in the church had a son who was struggling with alcohol. They had looked at lots of different areas. He'd been in and out of jail. He comes out, he relapses, he gets drunk, he gets violent, he goes back into jail. It's just constant boom, 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 boom. They had given up hope. That they've got a 30-year-old boy that's been in and out of jail 6 or 7 times, and they're sitting at home in floods of tears. They've given up hope. They thought there is no way. They've tried different programs, they've tried rehabs, they've tried this, they've tried that, and for the first time, the guy turned around to me and he said, "So there is hope?" And I said, "Absolutely, absolutely. That as long as he is willing to stick to taking the medication, then it will work. At some point, it will work, and just get some good people around him and support him and encourage him. It will work." But just to be able to give that hope now to anywhere and everywhere that you've got access to promoting the Sinclair Method, not us, the Sinclair Method, please, 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 for the sake of all the people struggling, please get the word out there as much as you can.
Yeah, it's going to be a ripple effect and a tipping point. So even if you're telling your neighbor or, just having it in the back pocket to talk with your doctor, like we're all kind of on the forefront of this and spreading the word. So whatever your comfort level is with how much you want to share or who you want to share with, like there's always something that you can do. Again, yeah, the Sinclair Method. I'm big on saying the Sinclair Method as opposed to just naltrexone, because I've met too many people that got on naltrexone and weren't taking it the correct way. And they're like, they never knew about that specific protocol.
Very good point. Yeah, very, very good point. So, okay, that's us for another. We normally do this the first Wednesday of every month, unless Katie's got something on or I've got something on. Katie's learning to unicycle across America at the moment.
Dream on. I can barely stick to 2 wheels.
If you're in the UK, I'm planning to unicycle the NC 500 next summer. So if you go onto Facebook, NC Gap unicycle, NC Gap 500 unicycle, and all that whole thing is all about raising awareness for the Sinclair Method here in the UK. So if you can go on that page and share it as much as you can, that'd be absolutely fantastic. So thank you, Katie. Another week.
Bruce.
Anyone's got any questions in the States, get in touch with Katie. And sorry, I need to change your email address, Katie, but you can still get Katie on the one that's going along the bottom, embodieddaily.com, or tsmcommunity.com. Is that right, Katie?
Yep, that's correct.
Or if you're across here, alcoholrecoveryscotland.co.uk, or any other way you can get hold of us, then get hold of us. We'd love to chat to you.
Yep.
I think that's us. Thank you, Katie.
Thanks for being here, everyone. Thanks, Bruce.
Okay, we'll speak to everyone soon.
Bye.